That's better. It helps with the stinging, you know? Hello, all you internet people. Welcome to our second episode of Potter Tongue. My name is Chris, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for clicking on this video. It's nearly impossible to talk about the wizarding world without discussing the magical creatures that live in it. And that's what I'm all about today. Magical creatures. My top 10 favorite magical creature species are alphabetized as followed: acromantulas, basilisks, dragons, gnomes, goblins, house elves, puffaskins, snidgets, streelers, and trolls. Any guesses on which is my number one favorite? Alright, there you go, you dozy dog. Have at it. My top 10 favorite magical creature characters are as followed, in no particular order: Fluffy, Aragog, Nagini, Hedwig, Dobby, Creature, Griphook, Firenze, Madame Maxine, and Professor R.J. Lupin. Leave a comment on who your favorite magical creature character is. Now, most of you have probably checked out this book at least once. Oh, my apologies. I meant this book. Wait, 2 books? Yes, sad to say, there are 2 different versions of this book. The original and the updated version. And believe me, there's more to it than just their covers. In the foreword of the updated version is the explanation and reasoning behind this change. I'll let you read it for yourself, but the short version, written for muggles, written for wizards. When I first got my hands on this original copy, which was back around the 6th grade for me, I had that same thrill-like excitement whenever I started the newest Harry Potter book for the first time. It's essential to use the Ministry of Magic classifications when talking about magical creatures, and I applaud Newt Scamander for including them in his book. But the more I read, the more I realized some things were missing. It couldn't be true. How could Newt Scamander not know about, or even worse, purposefully leave out these well-known magical creatures? Giants, Dementors, Boggarts, vampires, Vila, banshees, hags, house elves, and yes, even goblins are nowhere to be read about in this book. It then soon dawned on me afterwards that the umbrella term magical creatures has 3 smaller categories within it: beasts, beings, and spirits. The 9 magical creatures I just named must obviously belong in those 2 categories, beings and spirits. And the only magical creatures you read about in this book are magical creatures characterized as beasts. Being the Harry Potter purist that I am when it comes to source material, I was uneasy to say the least when I heard about an updated version to be released. Curiosity got the better of me, and after reading my new book, my worst fears were confirmed. Yes, Newt Scamander added 2 new magical creatures that did not appear in his earlier edition: the Thunderbird and the Wampus Cat. 2 houses at Ilvermorny are named after these newly discovered animals. Now, unlike my original copy, this updated version doesn't have any handwritten notes or comments by Harry and Ron throughout its pages. A cool little feature that connected the book even more to Harry and his world, because it was like you were holding the same copy he checked out from the Hogwarts library. Oh well, at least Mina Lima hasn't designed their own Fantastic Beasts textbook. Now that's a book I would not buy. I'd rather walk into Flourish and Blots and pick up a copy of the Monster Book of Monsters with my bare hands. Entering my 3rd year, the 2 extra classes I would take are Ancient Runes and Care of Magical Creatures, and if possible, I would drop Astronomy. Even if you don't plan on studying animals in your future job, Care of Magical Creatures would be one of the least boring classes to take, at least on paper. Getting a hands-on study of multiple magical creatures throughout the school year, with Hagrid as my teacher, would be super exciting. I'd definitely get an owl, possibly a newt. Not that it's my first choice for a career, but if I took an internship at the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures and had to job shadow Amos Diggory, I would immediately find a different line of work. He's one of my least favorite characters of all time, and just be unbearable to be around. but if I could choose just one creature to study, it'd be trolls. Now don't be mistaken, I wouldn't be training them to be security guards or learn ballet. No. Where I'd want to be is out there in the Scandinavian wilds, studying them in their natural habitat, accompanied by my copy of Travels with Trolls. Mountain, forest, and river, all of it. I want to be in the thick of it and have the constant thrill of peril. Just reading about the 3 different types of trolls and their various appearances and tendencies is, to me, the coolest creature I've read about in Fantastic Beasts. They certainly aren't the most picky eaters, as I would most definitely be on their menu, but given their stupidity, me being a skilled enough wizard, I believe I could handle the danger. At least better than Hermione. It would have been nice for at least one hag to make a significant appearance in the books. Maybe during Deathly Hallows? Not necessarily during the Battle of Hogwarts, but just one child that gets eaten by a hag? Oh well. Guess I'll have to wait until I can get my hands on a copy of Holidays with Hags. Now when it comes to Merepeople, is their lack of mom representation? Is there lack of MOM representation? Is there lack of Ministry of Magic representation just because they can only live underwater? I mean, if they really wanted to be more involved in the magical community as a whole, not just be regulated by the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, they'd best be off traveling to the Ministry to state their case. They'd obviously need some coalition with at least one wizard to help safely magic a small group of them to get to the Ministry. My idea is to use the spell the Dark Lord uses to protect Nagini while hiding out in the Shrieking Shack. You can do that, or just set up an authorized port key. One of the hottest topics in the magical creatures community is the right to carry a wand. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's not what Merepeople should be concerned about, at least for their short-term goals, but rather have a say in the creation of legislation concerning magical creatures, as well as those current laws in effect. Now, if Merepeople really tried to achieve equality with the wizards, would the Ministry really take them seriously? I personally don't think so. Now, just like Merepeople, centaurs prefer the classification of beast over being. The only ones we ever come across are the ones that have been placed in the Forbidden Forest. Not allowed the luxury of Hogsmeade, I can still see Firenze having a drink at the Hog's Head. After his banishment, of course. His race is so similar to the American Indian. Legally allowed to live in designated places, skilled in archery, and not inventing or accepting new technologies. Their fascination with astronomy and divination is an important part of their culture, being more in touch with nature than the rest of us. I mean, I know I named Firenze as one of my top 10 magical creature characters, but I really think he's my number 1 or 2 favorite because he would be so qualified to teach astronomy as well as divination, and I'd much prefer to have him over Trelawney as my teacher. When you think of magical creatures in the wizarding world, vampires are none of the ones you initially think of, but that doesn't really matter because there's books out there on vampires. Blood Brothers, My Life Amongst the Vampires, and Voyages with Vampires. I'm very curious to read what's in them. Can only a person who has magical abilities become a vampire? Or is it similar to werewolves that anyone can get infected? And if a wizard joins the undead, can he still perform magic with a wand? Are vampires legally allowed to carry wands? Are pasties and lettuce really the best substitutes for human blood? These are the questions I would hope to have answered after reading those books. Now, speaking of werewolves, don't ask, don't tell. Poor Professor Lupin's having a really tough night. That was such a cool reveal in Book 3 about Lupin. J.K. Rowling could write an entire mini-series just about Lupin. You know, him going underground trying to recruit werewolves on behalf of Dumbledore. I will say Greyback was more successful in recruiting werewolves, or at least in creating new ones. I'm very fascinated to know what kind of life Bill had to live after the events of the lightning-struck tower. Wolfish characteristics and rare stakes. He will never be a true werewolf. Besides his disfigured face, are there any other after effects he has to live with? Maybe the answer lies within Wanderings with Werewolves. Now the answer to the question, what snack should I have, is our unofficial sponsor, Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans, a risk with every mouthful. You just never know what you're gonna get. Bertie bots every flavor of beans. The next time you're on the Hogwarts Express and looking for that sweet snack, find the trolley witch and pick up some beans. Don't be afraid. She's really just a witch and not, I repeat, not, some guard that will impale you with her spikes if you try and leave the train. Bertie bots every flavor beans. The best wizarding snack for a true Harry Potter fan. Available everywhere wizarding candy is sold. I wouldn't be doing the subject of magical creatures justice if I didn't talk about house elves. Most ancient pure-blood wizarding families have their own house elf. What a great Wizarding World tradition. Finding out that the Hogwarts Kitchens is entirely run by house elves who are bound by the headmaster of the school only increased my love of Hogwarts. Even if Bathilda doesn't mention it, it's such a cool fun fact about Hogwarts. Hermione's reaction was priceless. It's so funny to read about Creature and his bitterness and disdain towards Sirius, while at the same time him adoring Walburga's painting and family possessions. For the vast majority of house elves, freedom wouldn't suit them. Well, yeah, that's a pretty accurate statement. Freedom wouldn't suit most house elves, but I don't know. Dobby is, of course, the black sheep weirdo exception, but even him, he had to decline or argue for reduced wages that he got from Dumbledore. So, even still, house elves, freeing them wouldn't do them any good. But I'd be very interested to see a movie about Winky and Dobby traveling throughout the European wizarding world, looking for jobs that pay. I'd rather watch that instead of the Fantastic Beasts movies that are currently being released. Sorry, Newt, but it's true. Not to get too off topic, but my first choice for new Wizarding World movies would be focusing on the original Order of the Phoenix, not the Marauders at Hogwarts. Just no. And certainly not CC. But I don't talk about that. I didn't get rid of the abandoned Banshee by smiling at her. I see you all bought my set of books. Well done. I would not, repeat, not, join the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. I am in favor of a house elf workforce as seen in the books. It's so refreshing to see good guy characters, not just Lucius Malfoy, who are openly in favor of the current status of house elves. The ones that come to mind are Fred and George, who practically laughed in Hermione's face when she tried to get them to join. Sirius Black, for obvious reasons. Hagrid, who probably knows most about magical creatures. If you like roller coasters, check out Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure. You won't be disappointed. Another one is Neville, who only gave Hermione 2 sickles because he lost his courage to stand up for himself and just wanted her to go away and stop pestering him. He liked her at that point, because later in the book he asks her out to the Yule Ball. But it's pretty obvious he doesn't care about her cause. And of course, Dumbledore. As headmaster of Hogwarts, he could have ended the tradition of house elves working at Hogwarts, but he didn't. Even though he did hire Dobby and Winky as free elves, he only paid Dobby, because Winky refused payment. But even still, when he became headmaster, he took ownership of all the house elves that worked in the Hogwarts kitchens. They were his property. Oh, man. I think it'd be cool to have a house elf of my own running around my house. It's just where they belong. It's in their name. House Elf. I wasn't thrilled when they were left out of the 6th movie during Slughorn's Christmas party. We got Neville instead. And they were nowhere to be found during the Battle of Hogwarts. Are the filmmakers trying to erase that part of Hogwarts because they are disapproving of the role house elves have in the wizarding world? I mean, in the Fantastic Beasts movies, is that why currently every house elf that has had a speaking role has been outspoken and not been afraid to question authority? Very uncharacteristic of them. From the 6th movie onward, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Part 2, and the 2 Fantastic Beasts movies, The filmmakers have missed the mark when it's come to house elves. They need to sort out their priorities. But enough about movies. Let's stick to canon material. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. It's time to take sides. Do wizards or goblins have the rightful claim to the sword of Gryffindor? My allegiance lies with wand carriers. Goblins may control Gringotts and the gold supply, which might explain the unique coin conversion system. Galleons to sickles to nuts to sickles to galleons to nuts get to galleons and so forth. But the belief that a goblin-made item, like the sword of Gryffindor, becomes the property of the goblin who made that item upon the death of Godric Gryffindor is clearly meant to benefit those treasure-hungry, greedy goblins. I'd just love to see the goblin who made the helmet that Hagrid gives to the Gurg as a gift try and take it back from a bunch of giants. I'm sorry. Oh man, what a slaughter that would be. If I was a professor at Hogwarts and taught care of magical creatures, I would take my class on a field trip to Gringotts so they could have an up-close look at goblins in their natural habitat hard at work. How fast would we get kicked out of there? We would annoy them so much. I would obviously need permission from the headmaster of Hogwarts to leave the castle grounds. Nonetheless, it would be a super fun trip. I just want to take this time to go on the record and say that goblins, among other magical creatures, but specifically goblins, should not, repeat, not, be legally allowed to carry a wand. More bad than good would come from it. At last, we reach a fan favorite, dragons. It seems like the main reason why the Ministry of Magic exists is to conceal the knowledge of magic from muggles. The effort the Ministry of Magic has to go through on a daily basis is impressive to say the least, considering what they have to deal with. The most difficult beasts to hide, by far, are dragons. With how much wizards use from a dragon, their hide, heart, horn, blood, and liver, they're like the equivalent of cows for muggles, never letting anything go to waste. You may not know this, but there are 10 different breeds of dragons. I will now attempt to name as many as I can. The Norwegian Ridgeback, the common Welsh Green, the Swedish Short Snout, the Chinese Fireball, the Hungarian Horntail, the Ukrainian Ironbelly, the Peruvian Vipertooth, the Romanian Longhorn, the Hebridean Black, and the Antipodian Oboi. My favorite task from the Triwizard Tournament is the first task. Can you guess why? Dragons. I'm very fascinated to know what kind of qualifications Charlie had to achieve to be able to work with dragons, especially his training after Hogwarts. I would just love to visit a dragon reservation. But would I want a dragon as a pet? No. Not only it's illegal, but the amount of effort I'd have to put in and day out to properly care for a dragon without violating the statute of secrecy just wouldn't be worth it. Even though they are without a doubt one of the coolest creatures ever. You know what else is cool? Spinning the Weasley Wheel. What? Weasley, 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 Weasley. Weasley is our king. He always lets the quaffle in. That's why Slytherin sing, Weasley is our king. Weasley is our king. He never lets the quaffle in. That's why Gryffindor sing, Weasley is our king. All right, let's spin the Weasley Wheel. Here we go. What do we got? Gimme, gimme, gimme. All right, so this is the Weasley Wheel. Just like in episode 1, I will spin the Weasley Wheel twice this episode, and as you can see, there are 8 different choices, 7 of them being the Weasley children, and each character has a note card that corresponds with them. And on the back of each note card is a different action that I'll have to do if it lands on that character. And the black spot, the option, that's just an empty spin again option. So spin it twice and do 2 different things, whatever the cards say. So let's give it a spin. Charlie, sweet. All right, very appropriate for being magical creature. Okay, Charlie. It says pop quiz. All right, so this isn't not just for me, but my viewers out there who are watching this pop quiz. So right now, pop quiz, can you tell me whose wand this is? And please leave your answers in the comments section. Whose wand this is? Do you recognize it? Whose wand is this? Please leave your answer in the comments section. Right. I don't believe they have a version of that wand in interactive form for the Wizarding World, so that's your one hint. All right, so pop quiz, that was your bit for you guys, and then for me, gosh, what could I mean, that sort of defeats the purpose of pop quiz because I'm giving it to myself, but dang it. You know what? I will incorporate some sort of trivia element into my next video that has to do with trivia, but I won't be in charge of the questions or anything like that. It'll be a third party. So pop quiz for Charlie. All right. So second spin. Let's see what we get. Bill. Very good. The oldest Weasley. Bill. It says movie marathon madness. Okay, so I've actually been waiting to do this while I'm doing my channel, Potter Tongue. So movie marathon madness, that means I will watch all 8 of the Harry Potter movies back to back to back to back. So this will be interesting because it shouldn't be a super long video, but I only do my videos in one cut, no edits. So I really got to think about how I'm going to film that. So sometime by the end of this year, December 31st, 2021, I will watch all 8 Harry Potter movies back to back to back for your enjoyment. So that's that. Before I go, Weasley Wheel. Before I go, I just want to tell you guys about this book I just read. It's called The Ichabod by J.K. Rowling. She recently released it towards the end of last year, 2020, and it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. It's her first children's book that she's written since the Harry Potter books, and has nothing to do with the Wizarding World universe, but it is a fantasy book with the plot being about a kingdom ruled by a king, and he has to deal with the legend of the Ichabod, which is a mythical magical creature, and the consequences from this creature. So I highly recommend that. Go out and read it. You really can tell that it's J.K. Rowling's writing, and her voice is so unique, and I love her. She's my favorite author, so please check it out. And yeah, I think you'll like it. All right, so that really does it for episode 2, Magical Creatures, here at Potter Tongue. Myself and my Pygmy Puff Birdie, my miniature Puffaskin, thanks you for watching this. Please let anyone that you know that's big into Harry Potter about our channel. I think they would really get a kick out of it, and I hope you did too. So until next month, cheers.